Hey, I'm Sour and I make videos with hardstyle production while pretending this doesn't hurt my actual hardstyle production, and today I am doing the long requested series on how to start your first ever hardstyle project. So you just got FL Studio, or only I would say any other DAW, but today we are definitely focusing on FL Studio. We're gonna make sure that I don't whip up any windows or tabs or knobs without telling you what they do. I might slip up here and there, but I'll try to make this as inclusive as I can get it. So you just got FL Studio and you open your first project. It might look like this. You got this 130 thing there, you got these drums that you would never use in practice, and quite a lot of other things. So how to start your first project, we might need to change some settings. You just go to File, you're gonna go from New from Template, and you go to Empty. You can also change it to the default. I recommend to go to the actual empty thing. I'm not sure where it is. Yeah, there. Default template, just go to Empty. And the fun thing about doing it like this is whenever you now start a new project, you don't have those annoying drums that you will need to delete later. And you don't have a certain thing on the mixer. What the mixer is, we'll come back into a bit later, but first let's do our basic orientation. So FL Studio is kind of windowed. Every single part that you need can be its own little window. So for example, you got all your samples all the way to the left. So this is where you can find all your drums, all your vocals. If this window is hidden, you might need to press this button. Or if you want to hide it so you can focus on something else entirely, just press this button again. Like it is the get rid of the library or browser knob. So we got quite a number of windows we should show you first. This first thing is our playlist. This is where you can actually build your song. Later when you start to make different parts for your song, in this you could potentially arrange them into a full song. The second window is a piano roll. This is where, as a beginner, a lot of your frustration will be happening. In the piano roll you can make chords, melodies, anything melodic. It is quite a versatile tool and this video will mainly focus on using this. Third one is one of the most important ones and maybe one of the most misunderstood features of FL Studio. The channel rack is where your instruments live. So every sound you hear in your song can be found in the channel rack. So imagine your song has a piano, the piano would be found in the channel rack. If you have drums, they will be found in the channel rack. And it has quite a number of really useful and some really confusing features, and that too we will be discussing today. Our fourth window is the mixer. And the mixer is where on a later stage most people start to struggle with. In the mixer you can essentially just work with the volumes of your different instruments, you can add effects and all other sorts of things to make them either sound way cooler, way better, or you can just make them work together as a bit more in the mixer. It all looks intimidating, but I promise it is not as bad as it looks. Now, there are more windows, but honestly, you don't really need to know them. Like, I don't think I've ever used any more than these 5. A couple other features that you might need to be aware of. This is very nice if you don't have a MIDI keyboard, because if you enable this, you can play piano or whatever with your actual just computer keyboard, right? Which is quite a useful feature. This is the metronome, so like the annoying ticking sound, which is very nice for writing melodies. And this is where you can find your BPM. And for hardstyle, I assume you want to make hardstyle because you clicked on this video, we work on 150, 155, or sometimes even 160. This number indicates the speed of your song. It is measured in BPM, aka bitches per minute, and it's essentially just your way to tell the project how fast your song should be. On your keyboard there are a couple of things you need to be aware of. Your spacebar is by far your best friend in FL Studio, because with your spacebar you can play and pause at any moment in time you want. So if I enable the metronome for a second and I press spacebar, you hear this nice rhythmic ticking. Okay, so to actually start your first project you might need to make some sounds. And for that I recommend working with a piano. It sounds kind of weird because in hardstyle you have all these amazing, really cool, huge, sick synths that play our melodies and whatnot. However, it is quite a pain to first make them and to actually hear what you're doing when you work with those synths. So I recommend to start out with a piano. The fun thing about piano is FL Studio already has quite a lot of them included. I recommend to go to Flex, so you go to this plus sign and you scroll down all the way to Flex. Flex is one of the best instruments in FL Studio because it is super versatile. If you go to free, you can find a couple of packs if you can download, right? I already downloaded all of them, so this list for me is empty, but there's just a download button next to it, and if you click it, you can actually use the sounds. So I recommend to get Essential Pianos. And in Essential Pianos, you can find a huge assortment of Essential Pianos. I like to use the Close Grand Light because, I don't know, it honestly just sounds like fun to me, right? And remember, if you enable this knob, you can actually play with your keyboard. So. Now, if you play your keyboard and it doesn't make sound, just make sure this knob is enabled, otherwise nothing is happening. So, how can we actually make stuff with this? It's quite simple. In your channel rack, you have these vertical slots. These vertical slots can be viewed as your "it is selected" indicator. If you click on it, it glows green. If it glows green, you can go to this piano symbol, aka the piano roll, and now you have the piano roll. Quick side note, the piano roll also works for guitars. So your piano roll looks like this, or kind of like this. What you probably want to do is you go to this arrow, you go to view, you go to key labels, and you go to all notes. This way you can actually read all the notes. Some of you may have had a lot of piano training and you can just blindly see what you're doing, but those musical elites are a minority, so just do this, make your life a bit easier. Essentially every instrument only has 12 different notes and then repeat it on different heights. So you got, for example, this C4, a C5 and a C3. And you can already hear they kind of sound alike. It sounds very much alike. So these are considered to be the same note. Why is this important? This is important when you start making chords. Chords are essentially just a couple of notes that work together nicely when you play them. So for example like that, right? This could be a chord. Same as this, right? And there are a ton of different chords and you don't have to learn them all, but we are going to learn a couple because it is really useful to kind of know the basics behind this. I know all this talk about chords and pianos or whatever doesn't really sound like the exciting hardstyle thing, but everything in hardstyle is based on what you do in this. All those very cool kicks and whatnot need to be tuned to specific notes in your song to actually fit. And that is why this part, even though it sounds boring, is really important. So with chords you have a couple of different types, but we're only going to focus on 2 different types because it is already overwhelming, right? So some of you may have heard about major and minor chords, and the difference is quite simple. Minor chord right here. You can hear it sounds pretty nice, but also kind of somber or sad. If you make it major, so minor chords tend to sound a bit more sad, a bit more depressed, a bit more incomplete, and a major chord tends to sound way more happy and way more fun. How would you make these? Simple. By counting. We're gonna start with the bass note. A bass note tends to be a lower note that just sounds nice, right? So for example, yeah, I'm feeling this one right now. It feels nice. So I'm gonna go up by a couple octaves. So remember how I said that you only have 12 different notes? We're just gonna go from a C3 to, let's say, a C5. What we now did is we skipped 2 octaves. An octave is 12 notes. You can kind of figure it out from the word oct. Wait, oct means 8. Has my life been a lie? So we're only gonna count up, right? And we're gonna only count the notes in between your actual notes. So for making minor, you got to remember from your bass note, so C3 in this case, we're gonna skip 2 notes up. So right there. So you can see I skipped 2 notes there. And then we're gonna skip 3 notes. And now you got yourself a minor chord. Da, 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 da. Very dramatic, very epic. For making major, it's the other way around. So you're gonna skip 3 notes, like this, and then you're gonna skip 2 notes. Ba, 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 ba. Epic and wholesome. A bunch of chords played right after each other in a nice sounding fashion is called a chord progression. And this is important because every chord progression has its own little bassline, aka a collection of lower notes that sound really good underneath. This is important in hardstyle because that line is what our kicks are supposed to follow. So how to make a bassline is pretty simple. You're just gonna pick a low note that you like. Yeah, like this one for example. Then we're gonna just find out a different note after it. And the length is kind of important. Like for example, a bass line you don't really want to be too fast, right? So you don't want to go like this, for example. This would be kind of annoying. And only make it change after 8, 6, 4, or sometimes 2 ticks. So this is fine. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is also fine. And you can also go for example, 6. Then 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, like that. Or you can just go to 8. So for making the bass line, we're gonna just focus on 4 by now, because it's kind of the default, right? So you pick a bass note you like, and I'm trying to match it while kind of humming it. And just kind of trying to imagine what kind of note I would like to hear after this. So. And by humming, you can pretty easily try to replicate that note by either playing your keyboard, or you can just try to do the shameful thing by working on headphones and trying to much better, right? However, that is way more difficult, so try to be comfortable by kind of humming it. Oh yeah. So I just made a chord progression by humming and trying to figure out what I like. And for me this went really quickly because I have a ton of experience. For you it might take a while. What you can do if you really can't figure it out, for example, like you made this, you like it and you don't know what to do there. What you can do, and it sounds weird, but you can just try every single note. It sounds like a lot of work, but there are only 12 options, right? So it shouldn't take too long. This could work, but then you would, for example, make this lower. This right now feels awkward. In music, everything is kind of connected with each other, right? So this note only sounds good if these and these notes kind of allow for it. By the way, this selecting thing I'm doing, it's just pressing shift and dragging, but I make the habit of also always pressing Ctrl and shift, because that's where you can select multiple notes. So to actually make the chords, Ctrl A selects everything. Then if you press shift and you click on the note while you hold it, you can drag it to the side. And if you now release shift, you can also drag it up. A D3 there, so we're gonna make this a D4 maybe, like there. Okay, I like to work a bit higher because it's kind of easier to hear, so maybe a D5. And if you press Ctrl and arrow key up, it goes up by an octave. For making chords, I'm gonna make all of them at the same time and then kind of troubleshoot my way out of it. So I'm gonna make all of them minor because I'm a sad boy. So we're gonna drag up, skip 2 notes there. We're gonna skip 3 now, like this. And this should give us all minor chords. And we're just gonna focus on chords that sound really off to us. And again, keep in mind, everything is connected. So maybe this sounds good right now, this one chord, but maybe, like, this sounds good on its own, but it doesn't sound good with the context of everything around it. And an easy way to kind of troubleshoot your way out of it is not just by listening, but also by looking. A lot of songs stick into what is called a scale. A scale is just a collection of notes that fit well together, and most Western scales, and of course there are exceptions, because it's music and nothing is simple, but most Western scales don't have 3 notes right on top of each other. So you never hear something like this. Because if you play it together, it sounds like what my cat does when she jumps on my fucking keyboard. This is just not pleasant. What you can do is you can just look for notes that kind of overlap in this sort of way, right? So for example, this note, and this note are 3 notes kind of theoretically stacked on top of each other. So you got this G, a G sharp, and an A. So to fix this, we can just move one of these notes to make sure this is resolved. we can't move this top note, and we can't move the bottom note of a chord. Because if you change this bottom note, the bass has to move. And in both the major and minor chords, this top note stays the same, right? So major minor is just this or that. So we can only move the middle note to resolve conflicts like this. So in this case, if I would move this middle note, so this G sharp, to right there for example, you can see that we now resolved this 3-note issue. And let's see how it sounds. This right now sounds way better than before. And we just keep continuing this until it all is resolved. And now we got a nice sounding chord progression. Most chord progressions, even like very happy or very sad ones, have a combination of both major and minor chords. So if you wanted to make a very sad song because your crush didn't respond to you, we've all been there, you still want to have some major chords in your chord progression. Because sadness doesn't truly feel like sadness if you don't know what happiness is in the first place. Hey, quick intermission. I recently launched a Patreon where lawyer producers like yourself can support me for just a few bucks. I'll upload your project files you can see in my videos, and for the videos where I actually produce the thing, I'll upload the full uncut recording so you can see what my production is really like, and you can keep track of how often I mispronounce verbs. As I'm new to all of this, I'm of course open to suggestions so I can make this a lot more interesting for you as loyal supporter. Thank you for letting me do this. And back to the video. So this is basic chords. To make them feel a bit more interesting, because right now this is kind of rough, right? This is kind of rough, and we're gonna make a bit more sophisticated chords for a more sophisticated audience. And this jump is admittedly kind of big. So what you can do to make this all sound way better, and to kind of fuck with your brain a bit, because it's already quite a lot of information and we're gonna stack more information on top until your head bursts. What we're gonna do is we're gonna invert chords. And you know how I said that an A sharp, for example, is still an A sharp even though it's a 5 instead of a 4 right now? We can do this with entire chords. So if I press Ctrl again and just select just like a random selection of like lower notes, for example, like maybe like this, for example, and just press Ctrl arrow key up, we moved it up by an octave. So right now, harmonically, nothing changed, because that A sharp 5 and that D sharp and that D6 are still like a D sharp and an A sharp. So harmonically, nothing changed. However, the way it sounds in a certain way did change. So right now, some transitions, for example, this one may be a lot smoother now. Like that. Pretty simple, right? This is all there is to chords. So making melodies is a big topic. I've spent countless of minutes in videos describing the problem people have and like ways to fix it, because it is admittedly just difficult. You're trying to express emotion or a certain feeling through clicking with some random notes on a screen. That is difficult. So don't be frustrated if this doesn't go well the first 100 times. It is difficult. So to actually start making melodies, what we can do is we're gonna go to this piano, we're gonna right click, we're gonna go to clone, and oh no, now there are 2 of them. Ooh, scary shit, am I right? Okay, again, make sure this light thingy is lit up. And if you like to organize, you can maybe like rename this first one to chords and bass. And you can make this new one named, like rename color, we can name this one melody. This light is again lit, and now you can press this piano icon again. And what you can see now is the chords we just made are lit up in a light gray kind of fashion. So you can see where they are, but you can't really click or move on them. And this is really helpful because melodies often use the same notes as the chord progression underneath, right? If I would just draw on like a couple of melody notes without really paying attention, right? So for example, this note would probably work. I can see this note over there, so let's use a C. Let's use this note. Let's like circle back to this. Oh, maybe like one high because of that one. Yeah, right there, right? We're only using notes right now that are used in this chord progression. So, and it sounds like shit, I know, but none of this sounds off. Now what you can do, if it's like kind of difficult to hear what you're doing, you can see in this channel rack a couple of knobs we didn't discuss yet. This first light bulb is just on off, so it's a disable one. Got left right with this knob, so if you turn this one all the way to the left, you hear it all the way to the left, and etc. This is our volume, and this is the one we're actually gonna adjust, so we're gonna turn this a bit down, so we can hear our melody better in a second. And this we'll come back to later a bit, because it is really important, but also quite a pain, so let's do the melody first. So again, make sure this is lit up, go to the piano roll. So melodies are difficult in two aspects. You got the up-down thing, so like the right pitch, that is difficult in itself. And then you also have the timing thing. Melodies tend to be rhythmic, and that is why they are danceable and fun to listen to. And when you start writing a melody, you're gonna bob your head a bit. Maybe flail your arm around like a drunken idiot. Maybe tap your foot or whatever. Just do something to like physically feel the rhythm of this. If you can't dance to your own melody, no one else will. It's gonna sound weird, but I want you to relax while you do this. Timing is really important, and a lot of beginners fuck up because they don't really want to take rest. Hardstyle, I get it, hardstyle is fast, energetic music, so the melody should also be fast and energetic, right? No. It's better for your first melodies to sound like this. So I'm gonna actually spend a serious attempt making a melody on. And for that I'm gonna listen for a while, I'm gonna bob my head, and I'm gonna try to think of stuff, I'm gonna try to press some notes, and that's my honest, true process. I'm gonna start this right here. If you click in this top bar, for example, right, but I'm just gonna press a couple of notes and see what else like sparks my interests. Ba-ba-da, ba-ba-da. I honestly like this a lot. Melodies tend to work with repetition, and repetition can mean two things. It can mean like literally copying something, but it can also mean just loosely copying a certain rhythm, for example. Like this is quite an obvious example of repetition. And it only works like if both of them are timed at the same time. So for example, if I move this long note over there, the repetition doesn't work. And while this last part may sound fine on its own, it doesn't work in the entire song. And that's why context is really important. So this is a very solid start of making your project sound like a project. I'm gonna do one more thing, and then we're gonna call it a day. So right now you just made a pattern. FL Studio works with patterns. Patterns are like short little pre-made fragments, and pre-made is just what you make, right? So patterns are like short little fragments of your songs. A pattern could be, for example, a melody or chords for the background or whatever you can make with piano rolls. I'm gonna paste our first pattern in the playlist, because right now if you use the playlist and just play our entire song, nothing's happening, right? And that's because we didn't paste our melody in there yet. So I'm gonna paste it in there. And now if you press play, you can see it starts to play. If you would like to be part of a thriving new hardstyle community where people help each other and just have fun in general, feel free to join my Discord, which is linked in the description. If you want personal coaching and guidance from me, where we just do one-to-one video calls, where I help you with your project and you can like look at my project and just ask me all the questions you want, you should check out my Fiverr, because those private lessons are by far the fastest way to accelerate your own learning. With all that being said, it was a true pleasure to be your host once again. Until we meet again.